RY Yachtmaster Assessments. Preparation for Passage Making Assessment B. So this is just the overall picture for the passage making assessments, and you've already done the pre-appraisal and the bigger part, assessment part A. That's out of the way. So now what I'm talking about is assessment part B, which is an hour and a half. There are 3 elements. There's the execute, 5 marks, monitor, which is the bigger element, and 1 question in particular dominates that. And then there's 5 very quick short answer questions. You should be able to rattle them off the top of your head. But they're easy marks, so make sure you allocate a bit of time towards the end. They need only about 10 minutes, but it's really important you allocate time for those, because they're the easiest 5 marks in the whole thing, or the easiest 6 marks in the whole thing. So just to remind you about the rookie mistakes, it's now 9 rookie mistakes, and the least common mistake is mixing up the tide tables. There's still a bit of mixing up with the DREP and the course to steer technique. They're similar techniques, but there are 2 key differences. So remember, with DREP, you join the dots, the fix, to the end of the tidal vector, whereas with course to steer, you join the end of the tidal vector along a 1 hour line to the course over ground. And the second, of course, is where you put the tidal vector. It's at the end of the DREP, it's at the beginning of course to steer. Not as common an error with day skipper or with Yachtmaster as it is with day skipper. Just make sure you're not 180 degrees out. Check the blue arrow on the plotter. Don't mix your neeps and springs, and you will need to interpolate or extrapolate rates. Nothing is ever neatly on neeps or springs. Watch your time zones. You're dealing with 4 time zones, so just be clear where you are. Are you in UT, which is no adjustment? And remember, Victoria tide tables on UT, as are all the Northern Peninsula tide tables on UT, but the Southern Peninsula tide tables are TZ minus 100, and that's the winter time for Southern Peninsula. And then you add an hour for daylight saving time, which with tidal heights in the Southern Peninsula, you either use the time on the tide or add an hour for the summer. And likewise with the Northern Territories. But when you're working tidal streams, just be very careful. If you're working in Southern Peninsula daylight saving time, you're going to have to add 2 hours to Victoria. The rest is pretty straightforward. Remember your variation. Don't flip the wrong way, that you're not adding instead of subtracting, and vice versa. Use cadet and go via the arrows, and also the same likewise for deviation. Use the text in the almanac. There's loads of easy answers in that, and some of the questions are phrased really. You should point yourself at the almanac, both the passage planning pages, and there's 3 of them, one for each area of the chart, the Northern Territory, Southern Peninsula, and of course the Neptune Islands. Be familiar with those 3 pages, as well as pretty obvious the pages for each harbour. Always use tidal stream, Victoria. Be careful the way some questions are phrased. If it's asking about tidal gates or when we should travel, it's usually about the tidal streams, where it's pretty obvious with course to steer and DREP. And the biggest mistake of all, which just continuously happens, is read the question, read the question, read the question. So here's the header for next week's exam. There are 100 marks available for the 2 weeks combined, part A, part B. It's 1.5 hours for part B, 10 questions, 36 marks, approximately 2.25 minutes per mark, and you'll need time to review. That gives you time to review. So just have the real discipline about the marks. You'll be using charts 3, chart 4, the almanac, and of course your appraisal notes. Most important, don't rub out your work from part A. That's really important, to keep your work from part A. Don't rub it out, because you'll be referring to the work you've already done on charts 3 and chart 4, as well as your pilotage plans. You must attempt all the questions, and note that there are some easy marks to be gained in the very last questions. A way to handle it is treat the assessment like a voyage. Appraise, read the question, plan your time, and this is all about time management. Not as bad as the part A, which is the worst around time. Execute your questions within the planned time, and monitor your progress and your time. Keep an eye on the clock, because you'll let the thing run away with you, and there are some easy questions towards the end which you can gain time on and gain points. Don't be finishing the exam not having done those easy questions. There's one question in particular that takes up over 1/3 of the time. I'll point that out in a moment, but you must stay on top of the time. So here's the questions you're going to be asked. So it's the executed, relatively small amount here. There's only 5 points. That's 5% of the entire combined exam here. And it's the first one is pretty straightforward questions about boat prep. You just need to be on top of things like how compasses integrate with electronic equipment, and just I've suggested what material to study for that. And then questions about the weather. And again, if you've done your appraisal notes in the weather handbook and you're familiar with that, you'll be able to deal with the challenge thrown at you. But you must be on top of interpreting weather forecasts and spotting any localized changes that are coming through with the weather. Suggested time for these two questions is just 12 minutes. So it's the first part of the exam, 12 minutes. Do it quickly and get it out of the way. The next part, now we're into monitoring. There's a few questions here. The first two are quite short. So first one is a challenge thrown at you around call regs, and you just need to be on top of your call regs as normal. Nothing unusual here. It's very typical of the type of situation you would deal with at sea in a leisure boat. It's not an oddball question. The next one is all about radar or AIS, and you need to be on top of your radar range fix here. Sorry, I said AIS, not AIS, just the radar and the range fix. This is the big one, question 15, and there's a lot in question 15, and we recommend 60 minutes to this whole section, the monitor section, but particularly for question 15, allow 40 minutes. That's the big question. Don't let this question run away on you. You need to be on top of your pilotage, course to steer, and interpreting weather. There is a course to steer question in this that you will need to allocate about 12 to 15 minutes of that 40 minutes. So you need to be on top of your course to steer technique, while mainly course to steer is dealt with in the chart work. This is a little chart work problem thrown into the middle of this. Don't be thrown by that. And then finally, this is the easiest marks in the whole thing, and there's 6 easy marks going here. That's 6% of the entire passage making exam. We recommend 12 minutes. You'll get away with 4 or 5 minutes on this. They are so easy, these questions, and you should rattle them off at the top of your head. I suggest that you don't do any study for these questions. You focus on the list that I gave you earlier, but just in case you want to do, they're the questions shown on the screen there of what you should look at. But focus on the earlier questions, and particularly course to steer, and these are easy marks. So as always, just to remind you again, read the question, do the answer, read the question again before pressing submit. When it comes to uploading, you'll be familiar with at this stage, we will be using 2 Google Forms. Or we'll be using, it may be broken into 3, we haven't decided yet, but the answers to the questions, that'll be straightforward. And then once the time limit is over, you'll be asked to just take photographs of your images of the work you did for questions 14 and 15 and upload them. And we will give you uploading guidelines in Google Classroom. So the easiest way to do the uploading, as we've said before, is have Google Classroom loaded onto your phone or your tablet. You can scan this image for iPhones or iPads, and this image for Android, such as Samsung, etc. And you'll find it there that this shows class 13. We'll be working in class 14, but that's just what it looks like for general illustration. So just a reminder on photographing your work. Make sure that you're not taking the photograph at an angle, that it's not twisted or anything like that, and also that it's overhead, so that we're not looking at a perspective picture. So it's square and it's overhead, that it's well lit and in focus. Make sure you capture all your work, and I've surrounded the piece of the chart here with some pencils and my Portland plotter, and that's the area we want you to photograph. No more, no less. It's in the middle of the Lawrence Channel there, and that captures both 14 and 15. So it's just one photograph for both. We don't want multiple photographs. It makes it a nightmare to correct. So just one proper photograph, and well lit and in focus. Do use color. colour. We're often asked about the RYA marking guidelines, and I've thrown them up here. You can read them yourself, but we're only allowed to give a response in 4 groups: good, average, fair, poor. And good includes excellent and 100% in that. Good and average pass, fair involves repeating, and poor we would have to make a decision where you repeat the whole course or just repeat one element of the exam, whereas fair is you have to repeat an element of the exam. In the last class, Eddie will be giving you feedback, Eddie and Joe, and you'll meet them individually while the passage making presentations are taking place. And we'll put you into a breakout room. You'll have about 5 or 6 minutes to have a chat. You'll get your assessment results, and particularly tips on improving, say, where the weak spots were you're in the exam questions. We'll have done an analysis for you, and a chance for you to give your feedback to SailCork. So to summarise for chart 14, we've the second part of passage making assessment, or class 14, which is an hour and a half, which execute, monitor and the short answer questions. And then we'll move on and we'll do prep for the following week, where there are 6 questions on chart work: plotting a fix, course to steer, EP, running fix, projected EP and tidal height. Good luck.